Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. I stood there in my kitchen, still wearing the dress I'd bought for her wedding. I'd imagined that moment so many times, the way she'd turn and smile at seeing me, the way we'd both cry when I pinned the necklace around her neck, how I would hold her hand and whisper, "You'll always be my baby." But none of it happened. She had told me not to come. Her voice had been cold, firm. "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come." No reasons, no discussion, just that. The house that morning was unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that makes your ears buzz. I kept glancing at the clock even though I knew the ceremony had already started. I had made a pot of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink and wrapped a gift I would never get to give. The silence clung to me like another skin. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, gripping the edge of the kitchen table like it could somehow keep me anchored. I kept telling myself maybe she would call, maybe this was all some mistake, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. And the silence just grew louder. When the knock came the next morning, I almost didn't get up to answer it. I was still wearing the same dress, though by then, it felt like it belonged to someone else. I opened the door slowly, expecting a neighbor or maybe a delivery, but there stood Caleb, my daughter's new husband, still in his wedding suit, the tie missing, his collar undone. He looked completely drained. Without a hello, he simply asked, "Can we talk?" Before all of this, before the silence, the heartbreak, the wedding that happened without me, there was love. The kind of deep, undeniable love that you feel in your bones and believe will never leave you. That was my life with Ariel. She was my only child, born during a thunderstorm after years of struggling with fertility. When I first held her, her tiny fingers curled around mine like they'd been waiting for me all along. From then on, it was just the two of us against the world. I raised her alone. Her father had left before she could even speak her first word. I never spoke badly about him, not once. I wanted her to believe in loyalty, in love. I worked 2 jobs, teaching 2nd grade during the day and tutoring in the evenings, just to keep us afloat. I never let her feel the struggle. Every science fair, every recital, every birthday with cakes shaped like castles or cartoon princesses, I was there. We had our rituals, Friday night movies, matching pajamas, popcorn. She would still crawl into my bed during thunderstorms even at 15, whispering, "Just until it passes." She was bright, full of life, always laughing. She had her father's eyes but not his silence. She shared everything with me. At least, she used to. I remember the day she first brought Caleb home, 24 years old, radiant, confident. He was polite, soft-spoken, attentive in that quiet way. I liked him immediately. Not just because he treated her well, but because he saw her. When they got engaged, I cried, not from sadness, but from joy, imagining the next chapter we would embark on together. I started a little notebook, filled with ideas and quotes for the wedding. I didn't want to be pushy, just supportive. I even bought her a delicate gold necklace, a tiny heart charm engraved with "Always your mom." I planned to give it to her the morning of the wedding. We once sat together for an hour flipping through a wedding magazine, giggling over centerpieces and color palettes, a moment that felt so normal, so us. I didn't know then it would be the last time she would ask for my opinion. In the months that followed, something shifted. At first, I thought it was just wedding stress. She called less often, our coffee dates faded away, her texts became short. I didn't push, I figured she'd come back around. I ignored the signs because I didn't want to believe the bond we'd built could be so fragile. I kept picturing the day she would walk down the aisle, the moment we'd share, a mother and daughter who had survived so much together. I didn't realize I was slowly being erased from the story I helped write. The change was small at first, almost invisible unless you were looking closely. But mothers always notice. It happened during a Sunday brunch Ariel invited me to with Caleb's parents. I was hopeful, excited, even. But the way she greeted me, flat, distant, stung. I smiled through it. When I mentioned a florist recommendation, she shut me down so quickly and sharply that it froze me. I played it off with a laugh, but something inside me cracked that day. After that, little things piled up. I found out about her bridal shower from a picture posted online. When I commented, she didn't even reply. I kept telling myself she was just busy, stressed. But the silence kept growing. I tried to offer help, suggesting things for the wedding, even offering my old wedding veil as her something old. Each offer was brushed aside politely but firmly. One afternoon, I stopped by her place with a basket of baked goods and a box of childhood keepsakes for her wedding. Caleb answered the door, awkward, uncomfortable, and told me she wasn't up for visitors. The box was returned a week later, untouched. The silence didn't crash over me all at once. It crept in, slow and sure, until I realized we hadn't had a real conversation in a month. No more updates. No more "Mom, what do you think?" Just one-word replies, if any. She no longer needed me, or maybe she no longer wanted me. I kept searching for where I went wrong. Was I too emotional? Too involved? I replayed every interaction, doubting myself, my memories, my worth. I cried, often, alone at night, behind a closed door. I didn't tell anyone, not wanting to hear, that's just how daughters are. The worst part wasn't the exclusion, it was the rewriting. I heard from a friend that Ariel had told her bridal party, "My mom just isn't part of this season of my life." It crushed me. As if I had chosen to step away. As if I had made myself irrelevant. Still, I smiled when people asked about the wedding. I bought little gifts for her, candles, slippers, gift cards, and tucked them away in a drawer. I didn't know if I'd ever give them to her, but it made me feel connected somehow. Some nights, I'd scroll through old photos and videos, her graduation, birthdays, vacations, feeling like I was mourning someone still alive. Then came the final blow. One Thursday evening, as I made lentil soup, my phone buzzed. I'd been added to a group chat called Ariel's Bridal Babes. My heart fluttered, maybe this was her way of bringing me back in. I opened it eagerly. At first, there were just happy photos, bridesmaids, color palettes, dancing videos. But then came the messages. Jokes about me, mocking me. Girls who barely knew me talking about me like a burden. Classic overbearing mother energy, someone wrote. Just let the girl have her day. Another joked about me wearing white. And there, between their cruel comments, was my daughter's message, "She means well, but she's just too much sometimes. Everything turns into a guilt trip with her. I just don't have the energy." I read it over and over, unable to breathe. These weren't strangers, they were her friends, laughing at me. And she had given them permission. I didn't respond. I didn't call her. I just quietly left the group. The soup boiled over behind me, hissing and bubbling, but I didn't move. I just sat there, my phone in my lap, feeling like I had been gutted. I didn't send a dramatic message that night, and I didn't cry either. I just felt small, like I had somehow become the punchline of a story I once thought I was helping to write. The next morning, I stood in front of my closet, staring at the soft blush dress I had bought for the wedding, elegant and simple, just like she used to love. I had picked it so carefully, wanting to look beautiful but not to outshine anyone, hoping to fit in. But now, the dress felt like a costume, a mask for someone who no longer had a place. That weekend, I got a text from Ariel. No apology, no mention of the group chat, just, "Hey, just confirming you don't need to be added to the seating chart, right?" Nothing more, just cold logistics. I typed out a reply, deleted it, typed again, and deleted it again. I didn't trust myself to respond without sounding bitter or broken. Finally, I simply wrote, "Yes, I won't be attending. I wish you a beautiful day." That night, I cried into my pillow like a child. Not because she had been cruel, but because I finally accepted she didn't want me there. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't slam the door. There was no grand exit, just silence. After the group chat and that short text, I realized there was nothing left to fight for. I hadn't been truly invited, not emotionally, not respectfully, and now not even physically. So, I let go. Letting go wasn't a big moment, it was a series of small, painful choices. I deleted the wedding ideas folder from my computer. I folded the dress and slid it under my bed. I locked away the necklace I had made for her from my mother's wedding ring, tucking it back into its box like something sacred but unwanted. I went to the guest room I had lovingly decorated in soft lilacs, imagining her and Caleb spending the night there after the wedding. I folded the towels I had laid out, put away the scented candles, and undid all the little acts of hope I had placed into that room. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not the neighbors who kept asking if I was excited, not even my sister who had said weeks ago, "She'll come around." Daughters always come back to their mothers. I didn't need comfort. I needed space to grieve, to understand, and maybe to start accepting that the girl I had raised with so much love had grown into someone I barely recognized. On the wedding day, I woke up at 6 a.m. without an alarm, my body just knew. The house felt too quiet, even for a Saturday. The sunlight outside looked too soft, too golden, compared to the heavy ache in my chest. I brewed a pot of coffee but didn't drink it. I stood in the kitchen wearing that blush-colored dress, not because I was going, but because I needed to see for myself what she had chosen to leave behind. I stood there for hours, barely moving, listening to the heavy silence. I pictured her walking down the aisle, everyone smiling, music playing, cameras flashing. I wondered if Caleb looked happy, if she thought of me even once. Then I wondered if it even mattered anymore. By noon, I changed into pajamas, tucked the dress back under the bed, and threw a blanket over it, like that would somehow erase the memory. I sat on the couch, staring out the window. There was no movie-worthy moment, no text, no knock at the door. Just a slow, steady heartbreak. And through it all, I stayed silent. There was a time when I would have begged, written long letters, demanded explanations. But not anymore. Not because of pride, but because I was just too tired. When someone shows you that they no longer value you in their life, you eventually stop offering up more pieces of your soul for them to throw away. I wasn't angry or bitter. What I felt was quieter, deeper, like walking away from a room you helped build and realizing the door had already closed behind you. In that silence, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I lit a candle in the living room, poured myself some tea, and sat down, not to cry, not to plead with the universe, just to sit with myself. I thought about the woman I used to be before motherhood took over my whole identity. The woman who liked journaling, who went for long walks after work, who once painted even if she never finished anything. And in that stillness, I made a quiet promise to her: if I was being written out of someone else's story, I would start writing my own. I didn't need a seat at her wedding. I needed a seat at my own table, the one I'd forgotten to set all these years. I had drifted so far from who I used to be. For so long, motherhood had been my whole identity, and somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the woman inside. I had stopped doing things just for myself, stopped dreaming my own dreams. My worth had become tied completely to how much I was needed. Now, without that role, I didn't know who I was. But the letter reminded me that I was more than just a mother, I was Leona. I used to love writing little short stories, nothing fancy, just scribbles in old notebooks. I remember the excitement of building characters, creating scenes, imagining lives that weren't mine. I used to sit on the porch in the evenings, writing until the sky turned purple. That day, I found one of Benito's old journals tucked away in a box in the garage. The pages had yellowed, but the ink was still clear. I flipped through them, smiling at how passionate and fearless I once was with my words. My younger self had so much to say, maybe she still did. I made a cup of tea, lit a candle, and sat at the kitchen table, not to scroll through old pictures, not to grieve what was lost, but to write. The words came slowly, but they came. I wrote about a woman finding herself after heartbreak. I wrote about quiet strength growing in small places. I wrote about dignity, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be seen. That afternoon slipped into evening, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel hollow. I felt alive. The next day, I went for a walk around the neighborhood, something I hadn't done in months. The air was crisp and cool, and hints of autumn were starting to show in the trees. I passed houses with wind chimes, children playing in driveways, and smelled something sweet baking somewhere. Life hadn't paused just because I was grieving. At the corner cafe, I bumped into Mara, an old coworker from the school where I used to teach. We had always shared laughs in the break room about student spelling mistakes and lunchbox trades. She looked surprised to see me but quickly smiled warmly. "Leona, I've missed your face," she said, giving me a quick hug. We chatted for a while. She asked how I was doing, and I gave her the kind of honest but not too honest answer you give when the real truth still feels too raw. She understood and nodded. Before we said goodbye, she mentioned, the district's looking for part-time reading tutors. You always had a way with the struggling kids. You should think about it. I smiled politely, but inside, something stirred. Not because I needed the money, but because I missed feeling useful, not in a way where I disappeared into it, but in a way that felt right. That night, I updated my resume. I didn't tell anyone, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to reconnect with the part of me that knew how to give without losing myself. Slowly, day by day, I began rebuilding. I brought music back into the house, nothing loud, just soft jazz and a few old songs from when Ariel was small. I cleared out the drawer of gifts I had hidden for her and repurposed them. I lit candles again, not to mourn but to bring warmth. I even joined a writing group at the library on Wednesday nights. It was awkward at first, sitting in a circle clutching my notebook like a shield. But no one there knew what I had been through, and that was okay. I wasn't there to be seen, I was there to remember who I was. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for an apology to feel whole. I was finding my way back, quietly and steadily. Healing didn't come with grand moments, it came in whispers, in daily routines, in small choices that meant everything. I didn't announce what I was doing, not even to myself. I just moved differently. Each morning, I made my bed with intention. I opened the blinds to let the sunlight in. I stopped checking social media first thing, stopped looking at Ariel's posts hoping to be tagged or remembered. I stopped chasing shadows. Instead, I created light. I started volunteering at the public library 2 mornings a week, helping with Children's Story Hour. I thought it would break me, seeing little ones with their mothers. But it didn't, it healed something inside me. I read aloud with an energy I thought I had lost. The kids laughed, pointed at the pictures, begged for another story. I had forgotten how good it felt to be someone's favorite voice, even for a few pages. One little girl, Harper, clung to me every Thursday, interrupting stories with questions like, "But what if the dragon gets lonely?" She reminded me so much of Ariel at that age that my heart ached and swelled all at once. I also applied for the tutoring job Mara told me about, not expecting much since I'd been out of teaching for years. But within a week, I had a phone interview. By the end of the month, I was helping second graders sound out words and build sentences. It was deeply satisfying, watching kids grow not because I demanded it but because I believed in them. At home, I reorganized my space, not frantically, not to kill time, but to reclaim it. I donated boxes of old clutter, things I had saved just in case Ariel might need them. That reason no longer held me hostage. I was done preserving a space for someone who had walked away. I bought a new bookshelf and filled it with poetry, memoirs, old gardening books, things I loved. I started writing real stories again, not just journal entries. Some were about mothers, some weren't. But they were mine. The necklace stayed around my neck. It no longer felt like a symbol of rejection but like a quiet badge of survival. I also made practical changes. I met with a lawyer to update my will, something I had put off for years. I didn't cut Ariel out completely, but I made sure guilt wouldn't dictate my legacy. I included charities I cared about and left instructions for my journals and letters. I wanted to be remembered as someone who loved deeply but also lived for herself. I didn't tell Ariel about any of it. I didn't send messages or try to guilt her into reaching out. Her silence was hers to own. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding, slowly, intentionally, creating a life that didn't revolve around being someone's safety net or afterthought. I even started keeping a calendar again, writing group, tutoring, walks with a neighbor, maybe even attending an open mic night, even if I didn't read. These were promises to myself. At the library, people began noticing. A retired professor asked if I'd ever considered publishing. A parent wrote me a thank you note for helping her son enjoy reading. At the grocery store, a stranger complimented my smile and asked what perfume I was wearing. I hadn't even realized I had started wearing it again. This wasn't a makeover, it was a reawakening. No grand announcements, no social media posts, just the slow, steady reclaiming of who I had always been beneath the ache, Leona. Not just Ariel's mother, but a woman who still had chapters left to write. More out of habit than true hospitality, he picked up his mug and glanced around the kitchen, his eyes pausing on a small framed photo of Ariel as a child still sitting on the windowsill. "She loved you so much," he said softly. "I think that scared her." I tilted my head, curious. "What do you mean?" I asked. He explained that Ariel once said my love for her felt so overwhelming, like she could never live up to it, like she would eventually disappoint me. I let those words settle between us. So instead of letting it happen slowly, she decided to disappoint me all at once. Caleb stayed quiet. He didn't need to say anything. I looked at him, this young man who had married my daughter, who had seen past her walls, who had come not to make excuses for her, but to honor the truth she had hidden. I could see the struggle in his face, the love, the sadness, the unanswered questions. "Whatever happens between you two," I said gently, "remember, silence can be its own kind of violence. And love, if it's not held accountable, can turn into cruelty." Caleb nodded, the words sinking deep. He stood there, mug still warm in his hand. "Thank you for seeing me," he said quietly. I walked him to the door. We didn't hug, didn't make any promises. But just before he left, he looked back and said, "If I had known, would have made sure you had a seat." I smiled, not with bitterness but with grace. "I didn't need a seat at the wedding, Caleb," I said. "I just needed someone to see that I was there." He gave a small nod and left. I closed the door behind him, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with a clear mind. 2 weeks after Caleb's visit, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten envelope with my name on it, in Ariel's looping script. I stood in the hallway, holding it like it might burn me. I didn't open it right away. I made some tea, sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Caleb had told me I was seen, and traced the envelope's edges with my fingers, heart pounding loud in my ears. Eventually, I opened it. The letter was short, less than a page, but every word carried a heavy weight. "Mom, I don't know how to start this," Ariel wrote. "I've rewritten it 6 times. I keep thinking about what I'd want to hear if I were you, but honestly, I don't even know. What I do know is I hurt you. I shut you out of something we were supposed to share. I did it because I thought if I controlled everything, I wouldn't feel like I was falling apart inside. I wasn't scared of you, I was scared of failing in front of you. You've always been so strong, so present, and somewhere along the way, I confused your love with pressure. I convinced myself that pushing you away would give me space to grow. But all I did was create a hole. I'm not proud of it." She said Caleb told her he had visited me, and about the letter I had written. She hadn't opened the gift yet, but she promised she would. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, just wanted me to know she finally saw what I had given, who I had been, who I still was. "And I'm sorry," she ended simply. I read it 3 times. My first instinct was to cry, but the tears didn't come, not because I wasn't touched, but because this wasn't the apology I had been waiting for. It was more than that. It was accountability, no excuses, no sugarcoating, just raw truth. Almost like the universe was aligning itself with this moment. Later that afternoon I got a call from the school district. The tutoring coordinator asked if I would consider coming on full-time next semester. "The kids adore you," she said. "You bring a calmness we rarely see." I told her I would think about it, but deep down, I already knew I would say yes. I wasn't trying to fill a hole anymore. I was following a thread back to myself. But the biggest shift came 3 days later. I got a letter from my attorney, just a copy of the will revisions I had filed the month before. I had almost forgotten about it. As I flipped through the pages, I found the section about personal items and inheritance. There, in black and white, was the note I had asked to be added. The heirloom necklace may be passed on if the recipient demonstrates understanding of its meaning, love without conditions, loyalty without expectations, presence without control. It wasn't meant as a punishment. It was a message, a boundary shaped into a legacy. That weekend, I packed up a few things, old photos, the first story Ariel ever wrote in 2nd grade, a beloved recipe book, and mailed them to her. No letter, no explanation. Just small pieces of our shared past, sent without bitterness. A few days later, Ariel posted a photo on her social media, not of the wedding, not of Caleb, but of a worn children's book titled, "I Love You Forever," with my handwriting inside the cover, "To Ariel, who made me a mother." Her caption simply read, "Some things take time to understand. I'm still learning." It wasn't loud, not for attention or sympathy. It was quiet. Real. Like a door creaking open. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was standing outside the story. Justice wasn't revenge or confrontation, it was clarity, ownership, and being remembered rightly. Thank you for listening.